It is Thursday, September 7th, 2023. And folks, you're watching or listening to the MMA Eco Live podcast. Welcome to the show. My name is Chris Presnell. I'm the owner and host of this podcast, owner of MMA Ecosystem. Also worked as an MMA manager, worked for Tapology. I've worked for a lot of different publications. But for the next hour and a half, I am your audience to answer your questions. And in this show, I'm going to go over the Asian MMA schedule for the weekend, highlight any prospects or events that I think you should know about. And then after that, I'll take your questions, ask me about anything you want. A few small things and announcements before the show gets going today. Do have moderators in effect for this show. So I'm leaving it up to them to basically block, mute people as they see fit. From what I can tell, we're on the same page of what constitutes as, is this racist? Is this mean? Is this degrading towards other people? Most of y'all, no problem whatsoever. You all are great most of the time. But for the odd chance, just trying to create a more safe experience for everybody. I think that'll help grow the podcast more and more and more. So really appreciate the help of the moderators that are helping out with the show. So thank you very much, you all. And then other things that I will get to, of course, I'll get to UFC 293, there's a lot of different events this weekend. I do want to tell you about kind of a new thing that I'm doing. A lot of people have often asked me about TikTok and do you have a presence on TikTok? And for the longest time, I kind of flirted with it a little bit. Didn't really know how it fit into my whole content scheme. Didn't really feel like there was a whole lot of money to be made with TikTok. Of course, it's all the rage among the younger generations, but just didn't really know how it fit in. And also just wondered, is TikTok going to be around? If I invest a lot of time and energy towards growing a TikTok audience, honestly, in the US, I've kind of adopted a little bit more of a wait and see posture towards TikTok, as it's slowly getting banned in lots of little places throughout the country. Just kind of waited to see. But I think for now, the other day I got the idea what I'm going to start doing on TikTok, partially because it's a really easy, quick thing for me to do. But I'm just posting little daily, 1 minute Asian MMA updates or news things. Most of these are not necessarily news broken by me, but they're just a little bit more of a personal way to consume news, especially as I've talked to more and more people who say that they get their news from TikTok. Kind of made me think, is there an opportunity just to record a short 1 minute news update highlighting something for the day? Perhaps. And so I think because those require very little, those are really easy for me to produce in just 10 to 15 minutes. I'm going to see how they do. I put out 2. I started doing that yesterday. Yesterday, I highlighted the AFC 28 show that was announced and highlighted a particular fighter on that show that's coming back after, it's their bantamweight champion coming back after 4 years away. Today, I talked about Wang Zong, a Chinese bantamweight flyweight fighter that is trying to fast track her way to the UFC and will be fighting on the next WLF show on September 15th. I believe it's Friday, September 15th, against a Brazilian opponent, the exact opponent TBD. So you can follow me on TikTok for that. I'm gonna see how that goes. If that goes nowhere after 30, I'm gonna try and do it consistently for 30 days or so. See if that goes anywhere. I'm also gonna throw them here on YouTube as YouTube Shorts. So some people have a hard time finding shorts just because YouTube is a much bigger app. But I'm putting them on both just to see, is this something people enjoy? I have a presence on most social media apps, and I've tried to kind of tailor different kinds of content for different social media apps. Instagram, you're going to get both all the like UFC news announcements. And this, I'm really active on my story and on my Instagram account. Occasionally, I'll post like profiles, bios on fighters. I'll also break news on there a lot as well. Don't do it as much as I used to do, but hopefully that'll change in the future. YouTube, you know what that's about. Long form content, podcasts, throw some shorts up every once in a while too. Twitter, all news, live tweeting events, and then Threads, a little bit of that, but also some like just random thoughts that I get about MMA that I'm just kind of spinning through my mind, really unfiltered. Threads we're all still kind of figuring out, right? So yeah, if you have not done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for the channel. Like the video, would really appreciate that. Pushing hard towards 1,000 subscribers, and that would really go a long way for me, even just one subscription. So I really appreciate that. With all that boring stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the schedule for the weekend. A lot of really fun events this weekend, kind of spanning all of Asia. We've got stuff in Kazakhstan, Japan, Korea, China, Indonesia, and then of course we've got the event for UFC in Australia, featuring Jung Da Woon. But first, I'm going to get to, well, first let me run through kind of what we got tomorrow. I'm not going to go through the fight cards for these just for the sake of time, but South Korea, we've got Ring FC 3. In Kyrgyzstan, we've got Octagon 49. And then we've got, of course, One Friday Fights 32. I think it's mostly some Russian fighters, a Turkish guy, competing on their MMA segments. So that's what's going down Friday from some different Asian countries. On Saturday, more of the stuff that I'm going to highlight. We've got Alash Pride FC 89 going down from Kazakhstan. Where is that going down? Let me look at my schedule here. That's from Astana, Kazakhstan. Lightweight title on the line between Rustam Kuday-Berganov versus Nizamuddin Ramazanov. Also got Bagdos Oljabe. Oh, he was supposed to fight. Henan Barao, but Henan Barao, as he likes to do, dropped out of the fight once again. As far as I know, the bantamweight title: Ruan Bekbulat versus David Jabilov. So yeah, some looks like 2 title fights on that Alash FC card going down Saturday. Those air on their YouTube channel for free, easy to watch. We've also got an event going down from Vietnam. Vietnam slowly picking up and entering into the Asian MMA scene. It's going to be a little while before they have any kind of names that have any recognition to them, but we got AFC alternating events between Korea and Vietnam. Those events so far haven't really like brought up any Vietnamese talent that, winning in regularity, but it's at least something to, and every little bit helps, even if they're just hosting events between Korean fighters and other fighters. There's a lot of Brazilian fighters on this next AFC card. And I think a lot of those Brazilian guys actually live and train in Vietnam, which is why they're on the card. But there is a native promotion called Lion Championship. They're hosting their 9th show. And I don't believe there's no one on the card that I'm going to like tell you have to watch them. But I know about this card because I've been putting in the results and also the upcoming cards for Tapology. So that's how I'm aware of this event. Goes down in Ho Chi Minh City, I believe, 6 a.m. Eastern time in the US, which would be 9 a.m. Pacific. So not a bad time, not a bad broadcast time. Check the card out on Tapology if you're interested in those fighters. They have the main cards are all pro fights, and then the amateur side is all on the prelims. So that's Lion Championship. But yeah, we've also got One Pride Fight Night going down in Indonesia. This is their monthly live show. I believe they've got the interim welterweight championship on the line, and then the main event, one of their biggest draws, if not their biggest star, Steve Suwardi is defending his flyweight championship against Aditya Ginting. As far as I can tell, this should be a pretty. I think this should be another win for Suwardi, one of the most beloved fighters in all of Indonesia. Really done a lot to build the sport there. Ginting could throw some surprises, but I feel like this will probably be another title defense for Suwardi. And then you've got the interim welterweight title. The former welterweight champion was Winders Patalima, which I say former, I believe he's probably actually the main champion there, but kind of up in the air what he's going to do. Guys, I would love to get some of these Indonesian fighters that fought or were supposed to fight for Road to UFC this year. We need to get those guys back in action. I realize that some of them may have injuries. They went 0-5 this year at Road to UFC. But it would be great if maybe a lot of them could head back to One Pride and maybe just get one more win under their belt, show off what they've learned at Studio 504 in San Diego. And then maybe past that, some international fights for those guys. But so far, I don't think any of those. I think there's 6. There's 5 that competed, but one of them got injured. Yeah. I don't believe any of them have been scheduled to fight, and we're 3 months after the Road to UFC opening round. So I know I saw on Instagram, who was that? One of those guys posted a video of him like moving back into an apartment in San Diego with a lot of those other guys. So maybe things are kind of starting up again. Could look at scheduling those guys for later this year in their next fights. But if we're thinking about who is going to fight from Indonesia in Road to UFC next year, who are the next guys to get on those cards, the list is pretty small from fighters that have not been scheduled to fight at Road to UFC yet. So I don't really know how that's going to go next year. I think we just need to get some of those other guys' fights internationally. So I'll probably do a video in the next 6 weeks. Actually, let me see. I have it written down right here. I have it scheduled for middle of October to do a video on the top Indonesian fighters. So yeah, hopefully something soon. I love what they did with the Cage Warriors thing, where they threw some of those guys in Cage Warriors. Some successful, some not. Actually, I think most of the time not, but it's still a really good way to test them against. Cage Warriors has all different levels of competition. They've got guys making their pro debut, then they've got guys who are UFC levels. So there's a lot of guys to choose from, both in the US and in Europe. I think that's a great option. Would love to see some of those Road to UFC guys maybe hit up One Pride MMA and then head over to Cage Warriors again. I think that's a really good idea for them to get back in the mix. But yeah, so that's kind of how I feel about that. Also, around the same time, I've got JCK. They've got an event tomorrow morning or on Saturday morning, JCK Fight Night 68. The main 2 fights I'll highlight from there, the co-main and main event. Co-main is a really good fight between 2 up-and-coming prospects, ethnic E-minority, Aping Shala, really good boxer, fighting Nartai Kazibai, a ethnic Kazakh guy. Yeah, had my eye on both these guys for a while. Nartai has not really been in action for a little bit, but I think, yeah, this is a really good like prospect versus prospect fight. And then main event, Shamuhar Idoli Bieka versus Tsai Shongchong. Tsai is a pretty good BJJ guy. I think this should be a win for Shamuhar. But could be really fun if it hits the ground. Both guys are pretty good grapplers. Yeah, JCK, a lot of people ask me, how do I watch that? It's been off and on Fight Pass. Where it is now is on a lot of Chinese social networks. If you go to jckmma.com, translate the page to English, and then look at their schedule or events, you should be able to find a link to watch it there. Otherwise, if you have Chinese social media, which I realize the vast majority do not, just check their social media pages and you should be able to find it there. I realize that it's a little bit tricky to navigate all of that. I've told you guys about a resource that I use. This is another place that you can watch JCK. If you just want to find like the biggest library of Chinese fights on the internet, go to hula8.net. It's a Chinese site, so you may have to use a native translator, but hula8.net, that's HULA and then the number 8.net. They have a lot of Chinese fights, more than anywhere else. And you should see a link right on the main page for JCK. And I believe you can watch it live on there as well. They have a little live streaming link. So it's a really good resource if you want to watch Chinese fights. Let's see. We hit a lot of the big stuff for Saturday. Alash Pride Lion Championship. Let's go ahead and talk about UFC 293. So the card is stocked full of New Zealanders, Aussie fighters. I think maybe in every fight except for the first fight between Kiefer Crosby and what's the gentleman's name? Kevin Jousset. Otherwise, and then we've got the Nasrat Haqparast fight against Landon Quinones. Otherwise, yeah, and then Manel Kopp. That's right. Otherwise, a lot of local guys between Australia and New Zealand. The one Asian fighter on the card, Jung Da Woon, a Korean light heavyweight, going up against Carlos Ulberg. How I see this fight going, Jung Da Woon has way more MMA experience and UFC experience than Ulberg. And I think a lot of people probably will count Jung out just because he's lost his last two fights. And I'm like barely leaning towards Ulberg in this fight. But Jung in his last fight tried to wrestle Devin Clark, which probably wasn't the best strategy. In his last fight, he ended up losing a decision to Devin Clark. But against Ulberg, he may have a little bit more success doing that. If he can do that, then he could definitely wear out Ulberg. Ulberg had some issues with his gas tank early in his UFC career. But so if he can wrestle Ulberg, wear him out, could take a decision or get a finish in the later rounds. If he can't do that, then he really has to watch out for Ulberg's counters when he tries to wrestle. On the feet, Jung has a ton of power, and so he definitely could get the KO. But we all know how good Ulberg is against in the kickboxing, in the striking. So you can I rewatched the Dustin Jacoby fight against Jung, where he knocked out Jung, I believe, with a right hook in the first round. In that fight, Jung was throwing he was throwing a lot more volume than Jacoby, throwing from a lot of different angles, a lot of different levels, which was great. But Jacoby kind of just hung back and found the perfect shot and shut the lights out for Jung. So you could maybe see Ulberg following a similar strategy against Jung if Jung's throwing a lot of volume, giving him a lot of data to formulate and attack. So I lean towards Ulberg to find the knockout in this fight, but Jung, I think, usually I feel like the guys at Korean Top Team do a pretty good job at game planning. So, but yeah, this is a tough one. Ulberg's got a lot of momentum right now, so I'm really looking forward to this fight. One of my most anticipated on fight. Should be a really all action fight. Really enjoy watching Jung Da Woon. So either way, it should be good. Light heavyweight needs all the light contenders that it can get. There's a couple. Light heavyweight is an interesting division right now, but as many Jung is like what, 29, so that would be really great. Not a lot of Asian fighters in the heavier weight classes, especially having a lot of success. So looking forward to that for sure. And then Sunday we've got We've got a Deep Show, which I'm not really going to cover. And then you've got Deep Jewels 42. Deep Jewels 40. Deep Jewels may be one of the most long running. I'm not sure when they actually because it used to just be with Deep, and then they kind of branched off and did Jewels. I'm not sure exactly when that started in comparison to Invicta FC, but they may be the longest running all-female promotion in the world. And Invicta, man, I've always been the biggest Invicta FC fan. I know this is kind of a tangent, but I've been the biggest Invicta FC fan, and I always will be. I always will try to drop everything to watch their shows. Because I've been to more of their events live, far more than I have any other MMA promotion. They're right down the road from where I used to live, but I don't know what the strategy is with Invicta FC. I feel like there's so much opportunity out there, but their like frequency of shows has just like really dropped off, and they have left like the mainstream conversation, it feels like. And I feel like they could re-enter that at any time, but I looked and they haven't had a show since May. Like you can't command a lot of interest in your product if you're only having like 4 or 5 shows a year. Excuse me. So yeah, they got bought by Anthem Sports, and ever since then, I haven't really noticed a lot of changes in their product. They've gotten better with their social media. Some things production-wise improved a little bit. Loved their last 3-person all-female broadcast team. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, they did just announce their next show for October 27th, and Nolan King of MMA Junkie reported that that's going to go down in Boston, which makes it pretty much all but a lock for me that Danny McCormick is going to defend her title, Irish strawweight champion for them. But yeah, if we're talking about all women MMA promotions, I feel like there's so much opportunity for Invicta FC. On the flip side, you've got Deep Jewels having their 10 year. That was a stupid question I posed earlier. 10-year anniversary makes that 2013. So I believe Invicta debuted in 2012, which would make them a slightly older MMA promotion as opposed to Jewels. But Jewels has put out a lot of pretty solid competition, a lot of competition that's gone to Ryzen or won championship, really championing a lot of championing the lightest weight classes for women, microweight, atomweight, strawweight. So I've got their card pulled up here. I'm going to share it with you all. And overall, a pretty solid card. Event, you've got a microweight championship between Suwanan Boonsorn or Amp the Rocket against Aya Murakami, which should be fun. Amp the Rocket, always fun, pretty fun fighter out of Thailand. Main event, really good Korean fighter, Park Soo-woo, great striker fighting Namiko Kawabata. Don't really know a whole lot about Kawabata. Mari Suda, a pretty good prospect. She's just 19 years old, and she's fighting Kato Yama. Mari Suda, not like the most flashy record, 8 wins, 5 losses, but she is just 19 years old, and most of those losses come to really, really good competition. I mean, a lot of these fighters have fallen victim to the Japanese way of matchmaking. I get really frustrated with that style of matchmaking where they pit fighters that have just like between 0 and 3 fights against veterans, and it racks up unnecessary losses, which can, I think, really hurt a fighter's ability to progress in a more natural way and eventually get signed to bigger promotions. I think if the matchmaking was a lot more equal, then we could see a lot more Japanese fighters and Japanese women in bigger promotions. But I think it kind of holds them back in a lot of ways. Unfortunately, we look at so many of these fighters, and they either have losing records, even records, or just a lot of losses. Sorry, that they don't need to have. So I get really frustrated about that. And I wish that fighters like Mari Suda would not have been thrown to the wolves as soon as she had. But she's on the card. I've heard this fighter here, Iru Takabayashi, is pretty solid despite her 3-3 record. But yeah, so, and then you got Nori on there. Decent card, not like the greatest card ever, but I like that they've got some other Asian fighters on here. They've got a fight from Thailand, from South Korea. Down here at the beginning, they've got a Dutch fighter here, so that's kind of fun. But yeah, check that out. They air on YouTube. I believe you subscribe to their channel for $15 a month, and then you can watch all their events. So I don't know. I mean, for me, that starts at 12:30 a.m. So I probably won't catch that live, but I will do as much. I'll check that out as much as I can as soon as the sun rises for me. But yeah, there you go. There's your fights for this weekend. Let's get into your questions, shall we? All right. Yeah, there you go. Jimmy, one of our moderators, setting out the rules. Be nice, be respectful, and most important, don't be weird. There you go. Agree with that. And then here's my other mod. Don't attack people and respect each other's opinions. Simple stuff. Just ask your questions. Be respectful. Filter your questions before you ask them. Yeah. Chris Presnell, consuming a delicious pretzel. That's me. Is it possible to have 12 bad fighters on a card, produce really good fights via luck? Hey, a lot of people dishing on this card, but if I'm looking at the matchups, I think it should provide a lot of entertainment value. Got Blood Diamond on the card, Shane Young on the card, got John McDessie versus Jamie Malarkey. That should be violence. Got Jack Jenkins versus Chepe Mariscal. Chepe had a really exciting debut. Jack Jenkins has looked good. Jung Da Woon versus Carl Olberg. Good chance for a knockout there. Tyson Pedro against Pleasure Man, Anton Turkelly. Turkelly has been totally hit or miss. He's produced some really amazing finishes, but he's also been a total bore in other fights. But yeah, Tyson Pedro, feel like he's one of those guys that's like, is he ever going to break the ceiling that he set for himself? I don't know. That fight could be hit or miss. Tafa versus Austin Lane, that's going to be a KO. Felipe Dos Santos versus Kopp, that should be a KO. Then you've got Tai Tuivasa on there. And like trying to think of a situation where the main event is boring, unless like Izzy does the thing where he doesn't throw a whole lot of volume, but I don't think he will do, just because he's not. I think most of Izzy's really boring fights tend to happen when he's fighting a really deadly power puncher like Jared Cannonier. Strickland is not that. He's a high volume, kind of like almost like a Max Holloway, like high volume, increasing the. Kind of increases as the fight goes on. So I think it'll probably be a really entertaining fight card. For that, I'm looking forward to the event. In terms of like moving divisions in a lot of meaningful ways, this is probably not the fight card for you. If you're interested in like who's gonna storm up and get a next title shot here, or a lot of that kind of action, yeah, probably not a whole lot, but I think it should be a pretty entertaining event for sure. My argument is fights can be good on bad cards, but it's not correlated to having name power on the card. Name power and having good fights are two different things that people don't understand. Exactly. There's like 3 different types of cards, right? Four. There's straight up bad cards where if I were to run through the lineup and it was a lot of fighters that go to decisions, wrestle against the wall, that'd be one thing, in the Apex. But then there's fight cards where there's a lot, like I read off, where there's a lot of a lot of potential for high entertainment. Then there's fight cards with a lot of name power that I'm like, this is actually going to be entertaining. I'm not totally sure. And then there's like the UFC 205, that card in New York, the first New York card that was like everything you could ever want it to be, or like a UFC 116, the Lesnar versus Carwin event in Vegas. That was just like incredible as well. We like maybe get one of those a year where the name power and the entertainment line up, but this seems to be just an entertainment card. At least that's how I'm projecting it. Do you think that press conferences are just large adverts for a fight? Yep, they are. That people invested are already going to watch. Slack, Luke Thomas, heavy hands don't seem to like pressers like 293. I'll be honest, yeah, I don't really watch the pressers unless like I'll look at the headlines as I scroll through Twitter or on sites. I'll look at the headlines just to see if there's anything that I absolutely have to watch. But I don't catch the pressers. They mainly, they've been called pep rallies. They are that. They're really just there to like, they're there to generate crazy quotes from fighters that are going to get headlines that are shared around. That's what press conferences are there for. They're there for people to throw water bottles at each other. They're there for people to call each other names and just get shared on social media. That's what they're there for. Can you tell when a fight doesn't have much going on, like the headline of UFC 293, that's usually about the culture war? Well, I would say, yeah. I'm seeing another question after this about UFC 293. The reason how we got here, UFC 293, the UFC signed a deal with the Sydney Board of Tourism to hold 3 pay-per-views in Sydney over 5 years. So between now and 2028, and including this year, they have a deal that they have to put on that many 3 pay-per-views over 5 years. So they're doing that in Sydney, which going to Australia usually is a slam dunk for the UFC, especially now when they have so many fighters. They've got all the city kickboxing guys. They've got Volk and Izzy that they can put, and you've also got Robert Whittaker that you can put in meaningful fights. And so the UFC just kind of sets in their schedule. We're going to go to Sydney, and we don't know who we're going to put on the card, but we'll figure it out. For this particular time, the problem was that something with their schedule dictated that they come in September rather than at the end of the year. If they came at the end of the year, say in December, then they probably could have had Izzy versus Drakus on that potentially. I know it sounded like Drakus maybe broke his foot, so depending on the timeline, but say he was ready by the end of the year, then they could have had Drakus versus Izzy. They maybe could have had Robert Whittaker, even Whittaker coming off a loss. They maybe could have put Whittaker against another middleweight guy. So it could have been a much stronger card. And I know there was a couple fights that fell off too. We had Casey O'Neill versus Viviane Araujo as well. So the fight also lost some fights. We had Kai Kara-France versus Manel Kopp. That would have been a really great fight. So some of the criticism against UFC 293 not totally warranted. I know O'Neill versus Araujo, not necessarily like a massive fight, but it would have helped. It would have helped that main card. So they lost some stuff. Something with their schedule told them we got to come back in September. And then it was like, okay, shoot, like we're putting Izzy as the main event. We don't have the big fight against Drakus. And just going down the rankings, Sean Strickland is the best option we have. But it does seem like there's a lot of like weird stuff going on at this main event, right? There's some weird stuff that Izzy has said recently. There's always weird stuff that Sean Strickland, one of the weirdest fighters in the UFC. So that definitely, I would say like that adds to the card just in the sense of it generates more headlines before the event. So some of that is culture wars. Some of that stuff is just weird stuff. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of weird narratives going in there. Gene, hopefully I answered your question as well. If you want to be excited for a card in general, it doesn't have to be UFC, does there need to be recognizable names and good matchups to generate interest instead of what Rio is saying, drama? Yeah. So you're saying not just UFC. I feel like that's a pretty broad question because the different tiers of MMA. So UFC, where you're elite level international, and then other promotions where you're elite to mid-level international, LFA, UAE Warriors, even the Bellators and PFL. All right, so sorry, I forgot to mention this at the top of the show. I've had a terrible experience with this. I've been working with this camera company in downtown Portland, and the equipment that I needed to get. So the saga is, I bought it. The package was damaged, and when I bought it last week, the product was damaged already, broken, didn't work. So I went back and they basically gave me like or they were like, okay, yeah, we'll have a replacement sent from one of our other stores. And so I picked that up today because it finally came in today to that store. And basically that one didn't work either. It wasn't like broken, but it just like didn't power the camera. It's a dummy battery is what it's called. So as soon as we hang up here, I'm going to just hop on Amazon and buy the one that I used to have that got lost. Sorry, long story. We're back on, we're good. But yeah, you're asking about recognizable names and good matchups to generate interest. For a lot of local cards, they just need to have local talent, because most of the people that show up to those events are just interested in watching fights. They don't necessarily care who's on it. While they're there, it's a lot more fun when there's local fighters. But I watch a lot of regional, local level MMA. I've been watching through a lot of events for Washington State here in the U.S. to put the results in Tapology. I've been doing that a lot, and people will show out from like nearby towns if they know someone, but a lot of times it's regional talent, people that are interested in that. Other people are just like almost in the same way that they'll go to a baseball game or a rodeo. They just want to be entertained. So a lot of people don't really care about that, at least on the regional level. But yeah, I think drama is probably the most important thing, even though that's not what I come for. Drama is what skill gets you to a certain level, but like drama sends you to the stratosphere. Look at any like massive name in the UFC, drama or like a very unique level of allure. Think about Anderson Silva. He always had the skill, but then like he generated this mystique and this allure of a very like Bruce Lee kind of like allure that eventually turned him into a megastar. Yeah, something different, something unique, I think is what will do that. Are you the type of fight fan that doesn't care about fighters' beliefs or opinions? Can you like a fighter with polar opposite opinions to you, or have done really acceptable things outside the cage? I'm the type of fight fan that just wants to see the best in the world have a tear up. Beliefs outside the cage stuff don't really matter to me. I think that is a good question, because you're asking me about a fight fan. Also, you have to understand that I'm also in the media. So for me being in the media, obviously, like, a fighter's beliefs doesn't impact whether you report on a fight or not. Sharing the results of a fight, yeah, a fighter's beliefs doesn't impact that in any way. But as far as being a fan, I'll be excited about a fight if I feel like it will be entertaining. But I personally, if I just find a fighter's beliefs really, abrasive or toxic, it's hard for me to be a fan of them. This weekend, I'm excited for the Izzy versus Sean Strickland fight, even though both fighters, especially Strickland, have views that I really, really don't agree with, that I think are toxic. But I am excited for the fight because I think it'll entertain. Now, will I ever be a Sean Strickland fan? Probably not. I'm not gonna like go out of my way to hype him up as like the coolest fighter ever. But I do think the fight could be entertaining. I'm not saying all of Sean Strickland's fights have entertained me particularly, and I don't spend a lot of time on the internet listening to Sean Strickland interviews to be like, oh my gosh, can you believe what he just said? I don't really care about a lot of that stuff. I mean, I hear about it secondhand and roll my eyes about a lot of it, but yeah, I mostly tune in for the entertainment level. The fighters that I'm personally a fan of, sometimes I'm like, fighters, just if you have really weird ideas, just please don't share them, because I don't want to, because I like you and I don't want to have to not like you. But I also don't publicize my opinions, my misgivings or conflicts with the fighters. I keep that stuff to myself usually. Like, I'm not going to go on Twitter. I mean, I don't know, maybe to a certain level. This is me just kind of processing a lot of it. But yeah, does Sean Strickland have some really, really misogynist, like, in my opinion, terrible views about gender and women? Absolutely. It annoys me, and but I'm not going to use my energy to like fight against that, I guess. So I don't know. Maybe I answer your question, maybe not. But if I look at all the fighters that I'm a personal fan of, none of those fighters are fighters that I personally disagree with. They're probably just fighters that don't share their beliefs. It's not that I side with fighters on one political side or the other. It's more of just like they don't really bring their like political or cultural war stuff into things. But yeah. Hey, hope you're doing well, man. I'm tuning in from my from my car during a drive. Hey, man, stay safe. Appreciate that. Why do people love pressers like the MMA Fighting and MMA Mania? They do post-presser analysis, like what you said, would affect the fight. Why not just focus on the fighting? Because people click on it. I mean, by now, MMA Mania, MMA Fighting, they know what will drive traffic to their site. They know what does that. They've been able to test everything out. They know what does the numbers, and for whatever reason, those must do good numbers for them. And for that reason, I don't really blame them. I mean, I'm in this game of trying to like create content that I both enjoy that also like helps grow my channel. So I can understand that. I've just chosen not to do that. But some people really like that. So I think that's why. Got a Korean event tonight, Hype 3 MMA. Interesting. Oh, if you're going to Ring FC, if that's what you're talking about. But yeah, enjoy that. My opinion, if you aren't interested by a matchup or fight, people pretending to hate each other isn't going to make me interested. Yeah, totally. I agree. Like, I don't, like, if there's any kind of beef between Strickland and Adesanya, I don't really give that a lot. I don't really care about that. I show up for the fight, the violence, the entertainment. So yeah, I'm with you there. Sammy, hey, I'm new here. Welcome. Sort of. What's your opinion on fighters like Adesanya doing his own media from YouTube? Heard from James Lynch that he finds it annoying since hardball questions are evaded. It is. I understand that in a way, because if you're a fighter, it gives you the freedom to make content that you really like. It also provides another income stream for you. So if I was a fighter, I would probably have a semi-successful fighter. If people cared, I would probably have my own YouTube channel too. But I also realize that that MMA, good, healthy MMA media is good for the sport. And we can't live in a world where everyone just has their own YouTube channel answering questions that they wrote. So I think that we need both. I think that we do need both, and that there's a place for both. But if you're not doing media because you have your own channel, I think that is a sign of poor health in the sport, because you're right. You're avoiding a lot of the questions. You're also avoiding a lot of the skill and expertise and the platform of a lot of MMA media sites. I know fighters will do sites. Fighters have done interviews with me when I've had 200 subscribers on my channel. I really appreciate it. Guys in the UFC have done. I interviewed Arichi Lung, and yeah, I'm a small channel, so I appreciate that. But and I wasn't there to ask him hard-hitting questions, but I asked him about Mongolian culture. What do you wish that people knew about Mongolian culture? And I think that it only helps you to be able to get out and talk to different media sites. So yeah, I think that we need both, and I think that fighters should open themselves to the possibility of doing both if they can. Would you call Carlos Ulberg versus Jung Da Woon manipulative matchmaking? As at Drake Ridd's old show, WMMA Mania, he called mismatches manipulative. I actually don't see this that much of a mismatch. I see this as I feel like both of these guys are a couple spots away from the light heavyweight rankings. So I actually see them as pretty close in there. And it feels like Jung Da Woon he won 5 straight in the UFC. Or I guess there was 4, then there's the split draw to Sam Alvey. But he was right on the cusp of the rankings at light heavyweight. Then he lost 2 in a row, and Carlos Ulberg, in the meantime, is on a little bit of a win streak, 3 or 4 fights in the UFC. So now the roles kind of reversed. I think it's actually like this kind of matchmaking, even though would it have been nice to see Jung take a little bit of a step back, maybe someone more in the middle of the rankings, maybe, but you have to realize the position that Jung used to be in. He used to be kind of he wasn't a big hot prospect, but he was quietly coming up the ranks. So I don't see this as too much of a mismatch. 3 in a row won't look good, but I think that even if he loses to Ulberg, he's not going to get cut. Is it embarrassing that Jared Cannonier is the backup fighter to 2 fighters he's already lost to? Well, I think that was that was the option that they had. So it was crucial that they had. Can you imagine if something happened to the main event this week and they didn't have a backup fighter? I think Jared Cannonier was just the best that they had. Drakus couldn't do it. Robert Whitaker, not sure, but he just fought in July, so maybe he wasn't ready. Yeah. I think that's the best explanation there. I think you said you don't cover kickboxing, but K1 Global has an event in Japan. Are you excited for that? It's Kimura versus Kanako, and both have had bangers in the past. Yeah, appreciate that question. I really don't I think I saw a tweet from one of my media colleagues this week that was for those of you that cover, or for those of you that follow MMA and professional wrestling and other professional sports, how do you even have a life? I feel that. Like, I don't feel like I can even do 2 of those. And kickboxing to me feels like a totally separate sport, whole nother long list of names to be familiar with. And so, yeah, I don't, that's cool. There's a big fight going down this weekend. Maybe I'll look into that, check in on the results on that. But yeah, I just don't like, I consume my life with Asian MMA and getting fighters records up to date, both Asian fighters and also fighters in the Pacific Northwest here in the US. But yeah, I consume myself with Asian MMA, and I just don't have the margin, to be honest. So that's why nothing against the sport, but yeah, maybe I'll check out that fight. Thanks for putting that on my radar. You remember the Ghost, the scout guy from John Lee's team? Well, I looked at the threads on Carlos Esparza and the Manuel Lemos. Doesn't say anything on how to beat Jung, just the habits of the opponents. Do you think that'd be a good resource for future opponents of Carla and Lemos? Absolutely. Do you feel like it's not fair that those mini breakdowns reveal so much about Esparza and Lemos? Hey, it's a free country. No one to say they can't do that. So just puts the pressure on like Esparza and Lemos to fix those problems, right? It's just wide out there. So no, I don't think it's unfair. Hong Min, hey, new MMA fan, welcome to the channel. Are you familiar with Bilibili? It's very good for MMA content and interviews. Bilibili also has a lot of full fights. Sorry if my English is bad. No, it's actually excellent. I'm your first international student. No, your English is great. Don't worry about that. Even if, I mean, yeah, never feel bad about that. I know the struggle of learning second languages and putting yourself out there in front of other people is a really vulnerable thing. And so, yeah, I've also had some of my Asian friends that live in Asian countries tell me, like, yeah, I tried listening to your podcast, but you just talk too fast. I'm like, yeah, sorry. I'm trying to get through a lot here. I'm trying to make this podcast an hour instead of 2 hours. But yeah, Bilibili, yeah, I do use it. And when I've used it a lot to put a lot of fighters' record, yeah, to update fighter records. Totally. I don't always know where to look, but maybe that's something I need to look at again. If you know, like, shoot me a message if like you come in, if you know of like channels on Bilibili that have a lot of fights, because there's still a lot of fights that I'm missing for fighter records. So that would be really helpful if you know of some really good channels that just have like tons and tons of Chinese MMA fights. Would appreciate that. Thank you. Positive question. Despite UFC 293 is really bad, I'm excited to listen to Laura Seiko's comment. Yes, absolutely. She rocks, right? I think Laura comes in super prepared and does a great job explaining a fighter's tendencies. She's also better than most commentators, in my honest opinion. Yeah, totally. And I gotta say, no one does post-fight interviews in the UFC or anywhere better than Laura Sanko. Like nobody. It's not even close, guys. Like, anytime anybody else does them, I feel like since I've seen Laura Sanko do post-fight interviews, it just like, it's like really like negatively affected the way that I perceive the way anyone else interviews. She feels like that she's that fighter's best friend and that she's like genuinely really excited. She asks both like the typical questions of what's next, but also like, how are you feeling? But then she'll also ask really technical questions of like, hey, that right hook was there for you all fight. Then you finally got it, finally worked. Was that something like she goes above and beyond the like, how are you feeling? What's next for you? She goes beyond that, which I really appreciate that. Watch her this weekend if she does those post-fight interviews. She is an absolute pro. What do you think of gyms like kickboxing having tryouts to accept people in their gym to take classes for the normal people? Seems different from the sister gym Bong Tao, where you can watch Zhang Wei Li, Yuri, Volkanovski in classes that you're participating in. I'm not sure what their tryout system is like, but if it's anything like the Tiger Muay Thai tryouts, I believe those tryouts are to get scholarships, not just to like train. And the other thing is that a lot of MMA gyms will have like, they'll have like their classes for everybody, and then they'll have like their pro level classes where it's just the pro fighters. And I think I understand that. I think I also understand why you could have tryouts for that. Some gyms I think just prefer to have a smaller roster. It's like we just want to have 20 pro fighters that are really committed and loyal to our team instead of like 80 pro fighters at our gym. We want to keep things small. So in that case, yeah, I think a tryout system could be good for that. The scholarship system is great too. You have to look into that city kickboxing tryout system, what that's like. But yeah, that's kind of my opinion on that. Adding to Gene's question, is it sad to see Laura Sanko get put down by many MMA fans for being a woman, despite being really good at being a commentator? It is, but the proof is in the pudding, right, guys? Like the evidence speaks for itself, and there's nothing bad that you can say, honestly, about her commentary and her work. When a fighter does pre-fight talk about another fighter, why do some fans project what that fighter said is truth? Because we see them as experts, and there's fan bases at play as well. So, and you have to assume that this fighter has done some research on their opponent. So, or at least their coaches have. So I think that might be why people might always believe that is truth. But yeah, we all get sucked into the narratives, right? We get sucked into the advertising. I think that was a well thought out answer, Chris. To build off my question, do you think that the fighters that don't talk much are the most interesting since they are more professional? I would say, if I guess you're asking personally, I think that you can be professional and talk a lot. I think it's about your skill, whether it's interesting. If you don't stand out skill-wise and you don't talk much, then it's hard for me to have a whole lot of interest in that fighter. It comes down to the skill for me, whether or not I think that they're an interesting fighter. Simple question. Have you heard of Drake Riggs' show called Broaden Horizon, where he covers and interviews rising fighters and Shingo the matchmaker? Yeah, I have. I've watched that. I watch that from time to time. Drake Riggs is a really good resource, maybe the best resource to learn about Japanese MMA. So for me, that's like one of the parts of Asian MMA that I have had the biggest handicap or know the least about. So I've definitely gone to Drake Riggs' content to stay informed, for sure. Yeah, it's excellent. He's a really good interviewer, really natural on the mic, and yeah, highly recommend. This is a comment I'd like to share. I know most of the boys here, and I'm glad there has been a change since Yeah. Thank you for the change. Yeah, you're welcome. Really, just like if someone gets blocked, it's not because it's just like, I really want this to be a place where you feel like you can ask questions, not rude questions, not mean questions, but like if you just want to talk about MMA, like I want you to just have the freedom to be able to share that without someone biting your neck for it. So, does doing interviews and not letting the fight week hoopla affect you? Something fighters need to practice. Exactly. Whaley said in a live chat that it took her a while until the Joanna rematch to get used to it. That is another really good use of doing media outside of your own YouTube channel, is that it gets you ready for that. And it could help build your persona well. Like having your own YouTube channel will help like in social media, we talk about, is this content growing your audience? Is it nurturing your audience? And nurturing your audience is basically just like playing to your current audience. You're not trying to grow, like you're just giving the people what you want. And then there's also the type of content where you're just doing what you enjoy. So there's kind of those three pillars, but I see like having your own YouTube channel is like, that's like for your fan base. That's really to give people that love you and follow you, play into that. But when you get out and, you know, get interviewed by different media outlets, that's growing your fan base. And it's giving you that really valuable media week experience as well, for sure. Yeah, no problem. Why do media members keep asking what's next? Usually the fighters don't know what's next. Sometimes they'll have an answer to that question, but I think the reason we ask that, like, think about on a Sunday morning when after a big event, all the articles are what's next. We all want to know that. I want to know that. I want to know what's next. I don't know why we always, it's a good question why we always ask that, but there is something that we want to know. If when who's it? Cyril Gane fights and beats the brakes off of Sergey Spivak, we want to know, okay, what's next for Cyril Gane? Is he going to fight Sergey Pavlovich? Is he going to fight Tom Aspinall? We start forming all these new matchups are suddenly possibilities that we get excited about, and then we can start breaking down those matchups and yeah, kind of having that fantasy matchmaking. I think that's why we ask that. But you're right that most of the time fighters don't know. I think it's more appropriate at a press conference than it is at a post-fight interview. Although every once in a while you get these guys that are just like, you know, they'll give this really spirited response of like, you know, I'm here to make it to the title. I want to fight the toughest guy. Like, every once in a while it lands, but I think most of the time they'll give you a pretty like bland answer of like, I don't know, whoever the UFC wants. I haven't really thought about it. Every once in a while you get a call out, you know, Cheeto Vera calling out Sean O'Malley or someone like that, which can add to the fuel behind matchmaking. So I get it. We love to like hypothesize. We love to create hypothetical situations. That's just like what I feel like what part of being an MMA fan and media member is like thinking about what's next. So I don't know. Good question. Thoughts on Chael Sonnen saying that Whaley saying "What's up, Boston" was cheap and idiotic. I know. No, I watch. Sometimes I watch the Chael Sonnen's content when it catches my eye, but that was one situation where I was like, Chael, like, not everyone can be Chael Sonnen, and I don't know why you care so much about that. Like, Zhang Weili is not trying to be Chael Sonnen. Zhang Weili is not trying to be Khamzat Chimaev or any of these guys. Like, Zhang Weili is a positive person that wants to have a positive connection with her fans. That's what Zhang Weili wants, and that's why she said that. I don't think anyone like taught her how to say that. I think her English is probably good enough to be able to know how to say that herself. Like, that's not a very. Chael was like, somebody taught Zhang Weili how to say this in English and told her that this would be a good thing to say. And I don't think that's probably what happened. I think that her English is probably good enough to even say that without even much planning and preparation. So I don't know. I think Chael needs to cool it a little bit. I don't think every fighter is trying to do that. I don't think that she really cares that much. Yeah, I was like, that's a nice try, Chael. I get what you mean by that, but not everyone wants to be you, for sure. Have you heard of Black Combat? Yes, I have. such a fan of the format. Yeah, it's really fun. Only critique I have is that I wish they had a way to watch their events online. I know I think that they're soon going to reach their limit of what they can do. They need to have some kind of way for them to incorporate their format with live broadcasting and immediate results, like MMA fights where you have a live crowd, but that you're not putting out either a live product or you're putting, I don't know. It's hard for me to really buy into the product when I can't, like, when it's so hard to follow in real time. There's an event this Saturday. That's great. These guys are fighting, but I'm going to have to, like, over the course of the next couple weeks, find out the results, or like probably just my friend's going to tell me the results in a mess. And, it's just like, that really holds it back for me. But yeah, it is a really fun product. All right, we're back, and I'm just wrapping up here, but yeah, Black Combat, good stuff. But I don't know, maybe they could get like a Netflix deal or something. That could be kind of fun, right? But yeah, that is it for me today, guys. Really appreciate all your questions, fun stuff. We'll see you next week. Yeah, basically that's all I got, and appreciate all your guys' support. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy the fights.